Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM, great to welcome back the Kapiti representative on the Greater Wellington Regional Council, Penny Gaylor. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Spring has sprung, eh?
I believe you have some light reading, madame.
I know. So it's a week where we don't have a formal council meeting or committee meetings. We're workshopping Tuesday and today. But lots of things packing into those sort of days. But for a bit of, keep my reading up, because normally on a committee week you have a couple of hundred pages of agenda papers to read. So, something to bite into and get your teeth into. So this week I was like, right, we have this new amazing document titled New Directions for Resource Management in New Zealand. So it's the report from the Resource Management Review Panel that has been released from June of this year. And, it's important for me to know this stuff and to get my head around what the thinking is going forward on what they're proposing to swap out with the current RMA. And also, of course, because I'm chair of the Environment Committee at Regional Council, so of particular importance that I get my head around this stuff. So, yes, it's now not to frighten us, and this is a bit of a war and peace. Oh, I guess it's war and peace in the environment, isn't it? And built environment. Yes. Oh, I should have penned a bit more of a punny sort of column on this one. Some 531 pages.
A modest little tone.
Yes, thank goodness for a really good index. Thank goodness the index gave me a heads up of, look, if you go to page 460, you can get your head round the summary and reports, the summary of these reports and key recommendations. So I started out with the introduction, have leapt through my little time machine to the summary of the reports section and the key recommendations. And now I'm going back to the start so I can actually just put all the pieces together. I'm very excited that early on I've come across on page 31 a really lovely chart, and I'm a visual person, and so throw thousands of words at me and I'm like, okay, we'll have to take this very slowly. But if you put a graph or a chart or a diagram in front of me, I can kind of go, I get it. So that's what I'm looking forward to, kind of the moment when I go, I get it. So they're going to they're proposing to repeal this RMA, which is, 30 years old now?
Something like that.
And what they say, it's doubled in size in that time in terms of page numbers. I wonder what we have as a country spent on it through lawyers, through planners, through hearings.
Far too much.
Yes, well, it's sort of been a quite an epic piece of legislation that also kind of, I know, sometimes puts the fear of God into you, but really too, it's like, the RMA.
The strange thing is, Penny, it was a simplification in its time, because it simplified over 30 different acts and boiled them all together and tried to make sense, because there's so much in terms of contradiction in terms of planning law. And at that stage, there's this thing that people are only sort of beginning to realise could be quite important, called the environment. So it actually, in its time, was a simplification of an already extraordinarily complicated legal warfare.
Wow. And I guess in a time of changing views.
Yes, indeed.
So some stuff that we take for granted now, and a lot more of us might think of, been of the same thinking. Probably was, not quite so common or accepted back then when this was coming through. And I note that, so the RMA, it's a huge bit of legislation, but when they've done this review, they have, because it's so much in the face of us at local government, they've actually reviewed the relationship between the RMA and the Local Government Act, the Land Transport Management Act, and also the Climate Change Response Act. So, you when it comes to legislation, you can't look at some of these, pieces of legislation simply on their own because they step across to one another a lot.
Yes.
But so what the plan is, I guess the plan is that they will repeal the RMA and replace it with 2 new pieces of legislation as sort of the main thrust of it. And the first main bit is called, proposed to be called, Natural and Built Environments Act, NBEA. So thankfully nothing kind of too scary about that little acronym. It's just NBEA. Okay, so Natural and Built Environments Act. I don't know. Are we going to be like when they changed SIFs and we're not allowed to call it SIFs, but we just keep calling it SIFs?
Quite likely. I do know what you mean. Absolutely.
Or it's like me who still talks about telecom. Oh, anyway. And so then there's that part of it. And my sense is that it's trying to flip things around rather than, as we all say, I hear the RMA and I kind of shudder and go, oh, how many lawyers and how many planners? But I think they're trying to project it as that we're flipping the focus and trying to be more positive and what can we do to enhance type thing is what I've kind of thus far picked up from the little I've read of these, mammoth epic report. And then there's this other bit of legislation that they're also proposing to kind of go hand in hand with it. And I guess what you could a dovetail. Would that be the right phrase, do you think?
A very good phrase.
And this piece of legislation would be called the Strategic Planning Act. So this is when we kind of go, the likes of me types go, oh, that's the one that I won't be able to read and understand. So that's when they're kind of going, we really want to get this country doing spatial planning. We want all these local government councils to join up and, develop their regional spatial plans, which is, lots of us love that idea. It makes really good sense. Lots of countries, I gather, are quite well ahead in terms of spatial planning. And yet when it comes to it, we shy away from it because it means actually negotiating and treading very carefully through a lot of other councils, domains and wishes and pet projects and just, all that sort of thing. And yet Auckland's done it. So that was a requirement and it did it. So I guess this new piece of legislation, means that the rest of us will be required to do that. So this is just the way we're going to have to do it.
I suspect you're right. I was talking to Benny Wanda not so very long ago, and we were talking about possibly the unseen agenda of the Three Waters legislation, which I'm quite convinced is going to end up with fewer local government units than we have at the present. And I've got a feeling that's part of the deal.
Yes, I reckon.
You're with us. Okay.
Oh, I reckon that's... Yeah, is it amalgamation by stealth?
It sounds like it to me. It feels like it to me anyway.
Because if you take out the Three Waters, or even if you take out the Two Waters, Three Waters, you take that out, that's the real guts of your local government stuff for any TA or any city council.
Yeah.
But I'd add to that, so then there's this other bit of legislation that's talked about just a couple of pages later in the summary stuff. And, of course, there's no environment conversation I have, or I'm sure anybody else has, that does not pretty quickly talk about the impacts of climate change. And so, particularly on the campaign trail last year, and people are saying, oh, what about climate change? And you go, oh my God, we never have a conversation without it in our conversation. We never have an agenda agenda of any committee where we're not in some ways we're looking at it through some lens. So as, focusing on the effects of climate change, again, another piece of, what they call it, discrete. Discrete as in the meaning as in specific, unique, not discrete as in low-key, I would say, because it's going to be called, they propose that it be called, here we go, the Managed Retreat and Climate Change Adaptation Act. Yes, so that'll alarm a few people.
And certainly quite a few along the coast, because I've actually pointed out to local politicians at the KCDC, I haven't heard those two words, managed retreat, mentioned for a very, very long time within those chambers, at least not in the open, and could well be behind closed doors. But
maybe in public
this is the elephant in the room, and this is something that we are the Kapiti coast, and we are going to have to face up to this, and gosh, we live in very interesting times. Penny, do you think this is a useful document, a useful part of the discussion, and a way to move forward?
Yes, of what I've read of it so far, certainly it's quite bold in that regard, because yes, we've been, shimmying around it for a while, and here we go, folks. Yep. It's sort of like if you're mustering the sheep, and you're mustering, and eventually you get them closer to the corner where the gate is open. So I will, week by week, perhaps it will be some sort of radio installment as I churn my way through the 16 chapters that I've kind of done the bookmarks, the bookend thing you call it. I've done the start and the end, the cheeks version. So I've read to the end going, is the middle bit worth reading? And it turns out it is.
So like any good politician,
it's a game changer. Yeah.
Like any good politician, you've gone for the executive summary to find out whether it's worth doing the real work. Well, perhaps we'll make it a podcast.
Wouldn't you? The podcast. Oh, you and I doing a podcast. Oh my God, that'd be hilarious. Yeah.
Well, we might have a go at that sometime. Yeah. But it's been lovely talking to you, and I'm sorry to disturb you on your time off, and we certainly hope that you enjoy your reading over the weeks and months and years to come.
Yes, my glasses might get thicker again.
Thank you so much, Penny Gaylor. It's been great to talk to you. Penny is the Kapiti representative on the Greater Wellington Regional Council. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
106.3 Beach FM.